นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนะมัสสามิ Blessings. Good evening to you all. It's inspiring to see many people giving up their Saturday evening to practice the Dhamma. And to see your beautiful centre here. You're very lucky that you have such a facility. Just now, our guide, Dr. Surya, and Sunny, they mentioned that some members of your group have gone over to Thailand, to Udon Thani area, northeast Thailand, to visit various senior monks there of the forest tradition. And myself and Venerable Dhamma, we're from what you call the forest tradition of monks in Thailand. And that's an old established connection between Malaysia and Thailand. Meditation masters and their students have been travelling down to Malaysia from Thailand for many generations now. And of course, since the time of the Buddha, Buddhist monks, what you might call forest monks, meditation monks, go wandering. They came out from India, and some of them even made it over to Thailand and Malaysia as long as 2,000 years ago. So this is not a new thing.
It's water.
Okay.
And that will be good.
Okay. So many of the Southeast Asian countries that have many Buddhists living in them, they help each other. So Buddhists, particularly Buddhist Sangha, came out of India, established Buddhism in Sri Lanka, later Burma and Thailand, and at one point Sri Lanka wasn't doing so well. Thailand sent monks back to Sri Lanka from Thailand to help revive the Sangha there. Sometimes Sri Lanka sent monks to Thailand to help revive the Sangha there. Now monks will come to Malaysia from different countries to help teach and guide the Buddhist community here in Malaysia and here in Penang. So that's part of our tradition. We move around and we help partly by teaching. We also, yesterday, it was the anniversary of the passing of the Thai king Rama IX. The previous king who passed away a few years ago, who was a great patron of Buddhism, and more particularly he was a great meditator, which is an auspicious thing for a country to have a king who meditates. Many countries no longer have a monarchy, no longer have a king or a queen, and certainly not a king or a queen who meditates. So that's was quite a blessing in his lifetime. He had a very long life of service to the country and to Buddhism, and he learned to meditate from a young age and associated with many of the great meditation masters of his era, including my teacher Ajahn. And thinking about him, because it was his anniversary of his death, it reminded me of one time when the BBC were interviewing him about a range of issues in Thailand, and then they got on to questions about Buddhism. And of course, people coming over from Europe tend to have their conditioning there from Christian background, Christian culture. So they asked him the question, do you believe in original sin? That the human mind is sort of originally sinful? And he said, no, I don't. He's very quick to cut that off or not to agree with the commentator. And he said, what the Buddha showed and pointed out through his teachings as well is that the human mind is innately undefiled, radiant, peaceful. But over time, through life, and maybe life after life, but particularly in just one life, this radiance of the mind, we often lose touch with it, and you might say our mind gets covered over. What does it get covered over with? Mental defilements, all those mental states rooted in greed, anger and delusion that we experience every day and most of the day. Excuse me. It's actually this truth that the human mind is, in its essence, undefiled, that allows the whole of the Buddhist practice to kind of take place and is why it works. The human mind, in its nature, is not anything. It's not good or evil. It's not a self. It's not anything. It's just a quality, you might say, the quality that you can know things. How do we know things? Well, we know through our senses, our physical senses. So you're hearing a talk from me, I think, unless you're asleep. You're hearing my words. That's the sense of hearing, isn't it? So if you're concentrating on what I'm saying, whether it's good or not, that's a different issue, but just the sound, that's your hearing consciousness arising at your ear, isn't it? There's me generating sound, hopefully saying something useful, goes through the microphone, the speakers, you get the sound coming to your ear, and it depends how much knowledge you have. I'm not a medical expert or a physics expert, but you get a little bit of vibration in your ear, goes into the inner ear, the senses pick this up and then they interpret that. They send a message to the brain and it interprets it as sound. And because you've learnt language, you can thank your parents for that probably. They're the main teachers of your language. However much you like your parents or dislike them, they gave you language, don't forget that. You can interpret those words, give meaning to them. And because you're Buddhist and probably hear quite a few Dhamma teachings over the years, you read books, listen to talks, the sort of concepts I'm talking about make sense to you, at least to some extent, hopefully. But that's one way your consciousness, your mind knows things. You hear, and then you remember and you learn from what you hear, and then you can also think. Once you've got concepts, ideas, you can string them together, and language helps again, but also visual images, visual memory. You remember things, so you can think. And obviously our number one sense is the sight, isn't it? You're always looking and seeing. You're not always paying attention, and that's why, say when you're listening to my words, maybe you close your eyes because you don't want to look because it can be distracting. Or when you meditate, most meditators will close their eyes to reduce the amount of visual distraction. But in a normal state, normal day, our number one sense is what we see. Always looking, going around and absorbing light, colour, shapes. To a lesser extent, smell, taste. Taste a big one, especially if you've any of you done a retreat, meditation retreat, your taste becomes a big deal. Because most of the day is very boring. We're just meditating on the breath, listening to the Dhamma talk. You start thinking, when's the meal? What are we going to get? If you're here, when they do a retreat, you get catering. Are the caterers any good? What are they going to provide? What taste will my taste buds be experiencing when the meal comes? Will I like it, not like it? That's the knowing at taste buds. And then we also have touch, our skin, so we can feel like the softness or the hardness of the floor, or the weight of our body on the floor, our clothing, and then the air. We've got air cons, so you get some cool air, and maybe there's pockets of warmer air, cool air, so it changes, but that's your skin being sensitive And your mind can know through the senses, the nervous system that functions through the skin. That's 5 external senses that are going on all the time, whether we like it or not, whether we know about it or not, or realize or not. That's happening, isn't it? And then you've got the mind, the 6th sense. And the 6th sense picks up all this data, it comes through to the mind, and the mind can interpret it, remember it, and experiences feelings of pleasure and pain, or just neither pleasant nor plain, physical feelings, mental feelings. And we construct things with the mind. We create moods, emotions, mental states. That's all knowing. 5 physical senses in the mind, 6 ways that the mind arises or knows. And what the Buddha kind of proved through his own practice is that you can know to the point where you do get in touch with this pure mind, the radiant mind, that is not defiled by ego, is the modern word, but we say the attachment to the idea of a self, the sense of ownership. I own this mind. So the sense of me, myself that might arise when you hear things, see things, taste things, or even just thinking. So you could say one of the big issues facing humanity, one of the big problems, apart from climate change, wars, economic problems and all those things that they spend all their time talking about in the world, the bigger problem is actually how to deal with all this sense data coming through to your mind every moment of every day. And it's probably because the news and education and all the things we give importance to in life don't talk about this, that we have confusion and conflict and suffering in our own personal life and in the world as a whole. We don't notice much about this mind and how it knows things. And so a lot of the time we're knowing wrongly. When I say wrongly, I mean you hear something and then straight away you form a perception and a sense of self. This is me hearing and I like what I'm hearing and I agree with it. Or maybe you don't like what you're hearing, you're ready to throw a piece of paper at me or something. Your experience of liking and disliking will be based on sense contact and then the pleasure or pain that arises based on your conditioning and what you've done before and what you see as important, what you're attached to. This is going on all day long and maybe you don't even realize. I know when I hadn't heard the Buddhist teachings, I hadn't done much meditation, I didn't realize it. If I felt suffering, I would probably say, God is not on my side today. Or I just complain and say, why? Why do I have all this stress and why so many problems? I might say, I don't deserve this, this is not fair, why is life doing this to me? So sometimes when you do have some pain or suffering, you're looking for a way out, you just sort of say, God help me, or the gods, the devas, help me. So we like to pray, worship, ask for things. Or if you're Buddhist, maybe you come to a monk like me and you say, I'm ill, bless me. I'm poor, make me rich. I love her, but she's not interested. Make her love me. They do that even with monks. Why? I don't know. May I get the job? All the things we want in life that we think we associate with pleasure, happiness, success. We're looking for a god or gods or monk or somebody to help us out there. Straight away we interpret our experience like this, and then we're kind of searching around. What we don't do very much is establish mindful awareness and come back to our own experience of this mind and what's going on. And so the whole of the Buddhist teachings are helping us to understand better what is going on, what leads to what. If I am suffering, where's it really coming from? rather than blaming external sources, the gods or the government or my neighbour or even ourselves. We blame ourselves a lot. Rather than always interpreting everything in the terms of a person who's wrong or is harming me or all of that, more looking at the experience itself. What's going on? And to do that, you need to be mindful. So, first problem is sound not enough. It's too soft. We need to pay more attention, or the modern word we now use is to be mindful, to pay attention to what's going on. If I feel stressed, there's causes for that. So maybe you're sitting at the back and the sound is too soft, so you're like, oh, what's he saying? I can't hear. You're not comfortable because you can't hear and then you can't understand, for example. This is going on all day long. What the Buddha showed is that, well, you can be curious about this, you can learn. And he saw the importance of that. So, he wasn't actually suffering very much. You might say the normal suffering of somebody born into a wealthy family with a lot of power and a good future ahead of them. He may have had a little bit of suffering in his daily life, but not much. But he left all that to go out into the forest, to train his mind, to understand better why it is we get stressed and why this mind generates and creates so much stress all the time. That's what he went out to learn, and he learned from all the best teachers of the day who did a lot of work on focusing on their mind, developing very refined, deep states of samadhi, mindfulness, samadhi, and understood a lot. They certainly weren't bad teachers or inadequate teachers on one level. They were very skilled and they knew a lot about the human mind and had understood a lot about karma and what does cause the suffering, but it still wasn't perfect knowledge yet or complete knowledge yet. There's something missing. There's a missing part of the puzzle. And that led the Buddha to even leave his own teachers and ultimately to go off on his own and find out for himself. If I'm suffering, where's this coming from? But the Buddha is like somebody who doesn't give up. He's a tenacious, persistent practitioner. And so that's one quality. He said anyone who follows what I teach is going to have to develop that persistence of effort, inquiry, not give up. Because as soon as you give up, you're back to the square one. Your suffering comes, but you don't know where it's coming from or why, and you're just looking for somebody or something to help you get out of this suffering. And you're back to square one, and it's not very satisfactory. The Buddha, though, he didn't give up, and he said, if you want to find out how to go beyond suffering, you've also got to practice and develop this persistent effort, inquiry, to learn, to find out from your experience. But the good news is he gave us all the tools to do that. It's not like you have to search around like the Buddha had to search around. He didn't have a teacher who could teach him this. He had to teach himself. That's why we give so much appreciation and respect to Buddha, because he's like self-taught, self-enlightened. We call him a Sambuddha. We are students of Sambuddha. If we become enlightened, they'll call us a Savaka, a noble one, a noble enlightened student of the Buddha. So the Buddha's done half the hard work for us. He's already said, he taught the Dhamma, the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Noble Path. He's given us the means to find out about this mind, why we suffer, where it comes from. So he's done half the work for us. He's given us like a shortcut. Better than any GPS system you can use in Penang to get through all this bad traffic we're experiencing at the moment. Better than any of those. He's done it all and he's laid it out for us. We have the texts, and then we also have living practitioners, mostly Sangha, but lay teachers as well. He's done it all for us, and so it's a really very direct way to completely understand how to deal with this mind that loves to suffer. And so the first thing is, he said, well, this mind is inherently radiant, pure, peaceful, but because of our delusion and our misunderstanding, we create suffering out of our experience. As we do see things, hear things, taste things, we misinterpret it all from a place of a self, a constant, unchanging self. You might say we're too rigid in our thinking because we're untrained, we haven't taken on some of these teachings the Buddha gave us. Too rigid, so we always react with a sense of self. So that means even when we experience pleasure, we have suffering, but it's hidden. You have pleasure, the suffering is more, I might lose it. When's this going to end? I don't want it to end. So you try and hold on to the pleasure and the happinesses of life. Or if it turns into suffering, pain, difficulty, then you're always trying to get back to the pleasure and despising the pain. And often despising the pain, not wanting the pain, makes it worse. I'm in pain, I don't want this, so you actually make the whole thing worse. Then you're seeking pleasure as a way out, and you can't hold on to the pleasure for very long, because when I say pleasure, I mean the pleasure of the senses, the material world. You can't hold on to that for very long, so it doesn't last. So you're in this endless cycle of seeking pleasure, escaping pain. So at first you just accept these teachings, like what I'm saying, you just listen, maybe it makes sense, maybe not. If you've been practicing meditation and Buddhism for a while, it might make sense. But the Buddha, he gave a very simple clue that I think most people can understand. If you don't yet understand what he was talking about, why we suffer and where's it coming from, he said just look at posture, the way you use posture in daily life. Meaning, at the moment you're sitting, you sit for a while, at first you feel comfortable, come into the room, it's cool, you sit down, you have a mat, sit down, it's comfortable, good. But then after a little while, there's an ache, a pain, you move your leg, you wriggle, your back hurts, there's an itch, there's a this, there's a that. So you can't sit still very easily for very long, and eventually it becomes almost torture, doesn't it? A really long time. If I keep talking now, we'll reach, if I keep talking for an hour, you'll start be looking at me and you'll say, well, I like the talk, but when's he going to stop? And you might think that's just your opinion, but there's going to be reasons for that, and number one reason is maybe your legs hurt, your back hurts, you're tired, it's hard work. And that's going on all through the day, not just when the monk is talking. It's nothing to do with me. That's just having a human body. You sit in your car too long, it hurts. Why do you get out of bed in the morning? Everyone loves their bed. They love their pillow, their mattress. They just want to lie there and enjoy the comfort of lying in bed, especially the older you get or if you're ill. But you can't do it. Why? Because you get bed sores and pains just from lying down too long. So you have to get up every day. If you're smart, you get up for a little while, exercise, and you go back to bed. Okay, you can, but you have to keep changing posture, don't you? You sit too long, it hurts, you get up. You walk too long, it's tiring, you sit down. Sit down too long, you lie down. You lie down too long, you have to get up again. Life is just one endless moving of postures. That's why the Buddha said the beginning of mindfulness practice, to get to know this mind, yourself better, just watch your posture, observe posture through daily life. You can take it on as a little project, a little bit of self-analysis, self-awareness project. How long do I sit every day? How long do I walk? How long do I lie down every day? And you'll start to understand. You don't really need to write anything down. It's not that kind of project. It's just observing with your mind. And that's another point. What did the Buddha use to understand the mind? We use the mind. It sometimes brings problems because Buddhists will say, well, if I practice mindfulness and I start watching my mind and watching my body, who's doing that? Well, your mind is doing that. So the mind is watching the mind, watching itself. They say, well, how can you watch yourself? Well, we have to use language again, concepts. So sometimes people say, well, it's almost like you divide your mind into two. And they say, have you got two minds? We even say that sometimes, don't they? When you can't decide something, you say, I'm in two minds about this. I can see both sides, the good, the bad, the liking, the disliking. But when we say divide your mind, what we simply mean is when you're cultivating certain qualities such as mindfulness, awareness, clear comprehension, what you might call investigation of the Dhamma. Technical term is Dhamma Vichaya or Yoniso Manasikara. But what you mean is investigating what's going on. It's like you're dividing your mind. So then there's the normal mind that brings up thoughts, memories, feelings, experiences the body, experiences itself, mental states. And then this other part of the mind that you're developing, where you divide off and you start developing more awareness and investigation to gain understanding and insight. Both within one mind, except it's as if you're dividing your mind a little bit through activity, you're training your mind. You might call it self-training, it's another way. But you're developing these qualities, so it's as if there's one part of the mind looking back and understanding the first part. That's where you can start to understand better what the Buddha was talking about, which is why we teach meditation, mindfulness practice. Because Buddhism is not just something you believe in or agree with as a good idea and leave it there. That's not enough. You also have to practice it. And this is the hard part, because everyone loves the idea of going on a meditation retreat, practicing mindfulness, being more aware of oneself. Everyone thinks good idea. But when I actually, or any other teacher says, now we're going to sit meditation for an hour, everyone, half the room disappears. It's hard work, and so sometimes a bit off-putting, or like someone earlier today, they said, if I meditate, I get afraid. And maybe you do. Maybe you've heard too many bad stories about meditators going funny or seeing ghosts or things happening. I even had one lady once who said, I'm afraid if I meditate, I close my eyes, my mind becomes peaceful, I'm just going to rise up in the air, float away and never come back. I've never seen that happen or even heard of that happening. In the whole history of humanity, I still haven't heard that really happening. But we can think it, of course, because we like to find excuses why we don't want to meditate. Because when you meditate, you have to go against some of your habits, your desires. You have to put up with things, you have to look at things, and that's not always easy. If you want to compare it, like say you use a mirror to check your appearance. If you see something you don't like, say you've got clothes on and you see a stain, straight away you go, can't do that. I can't go to work with a stained shirt or a stained jacket or stained this. Or if you look at your face, there's a blemish. You've got a pimple or something's gone wrong, whatever. Or your hair is out. I can't go with that. I've got to fix that. So we spend a lot more time in front of the mirror than we do meditating, if we're honest. Except for monks, we often don't even have a mirror, and it's quite nice not having a mirror. But we don't like blemishes on the physical appearance or on the body. Well, meditation is a bit like that. You start practicing some self-observation, bringing up the mindfulness. You're developing the mirror of mindfulness. Sometimes the first thing you see you don't like. Maybe you see a negative thought. You've got a bit of anger, or just not very peaceful, confused, worried. It's not nice to see, maybe. Just like seeing something in the mirror you don't like. You either run away from it, or you quickly clean it up. Well, your mind's the same. You may run away from it, meaning you don't want to meditate. You don't want to see what's there. We don't want to know about ourselves. And that keeps us stuck in delusion, stuck in suffering. Or if you see it, you don't like it, so you may have a reaction. So often people say, I can't meditate, I'm thinking too much. Hold on. You meditate because you think too much. That's why you meditate. But they use it as an excuse not to meditate. Or say, I'm too angry to meditate. I'm too worried to meditate. That's the whole point of it. If you have these kind of experiences, you need to start learning where are they coming from, what's going on. What did the Buddha say? He said, before I was a Buddha, I'm a bodhisattva. Meaning you're all bodhisattvas in the sense you're practicing to overcome suffering. We're all bodhisattvas in that sense. I know we may not be the formal, real bodhisattva, but we're yogis practicing for enlightenment, so we're on that way, on that path. The Buddha said when he was a bodhisattva practicing for Nibbana, if a defilement arose when he was sitting, he would carry on sitting until he subdued that defilement and abandoned it. If he was walking, he'd carry on walking until he's abandoned that defilement. That was his priority. It wasn't, oh, I'll do it for 10 minutes and then go and have my food, or do it for 10 minutes and then pick up my phone. He walked until he gave up his fear, his anger, his greed, his lust, his worries, whatever he had, he would practice until he had abandoned it. That's probably the main difference between us and a Buddha or a bodhisattva, a real bodhisattva, is that we give up too quickly, too easily distracted, easily put off, usually by ourselves, not by anyone else. We just do it to ourselves. Nevertheless, we've got to take the Buddha as our example, or some living masters if you want. That can help as well. So there's a practice in Buddhism called Sanghanusati, recollecting the qualities of enlightened beings. They could be men, women, monks, nuns, who we believe or have heard of are enlightened. You may not know absolutely, but if you feel confident in the kind of understanding they have and what they teach, that's probably good enough. So I'm lucky, I'm a student of Ajahn Chah. You can read his biography, you can read his teachings, so there's still a lot of Ajahn Chah left in the world. And I think of Ajahn Chah, I go, oh, I got to do it. I got to be mindful, can't be lazy, I can't give in to my anger, I can't give in to my fears. I get a lot of energy and commitment to the practice by thinking of my teacher. I get examples of how he practiced from what I know. I can apply that to myself. But it could be any teacher that you know, that you've met, that you've lived with, that you've come across. So that helps. Living teachers. We've got the Buddha, and then we've got the living teachers that we have met or heard about. You get a bit of energy then to face up to these problems that we love to find excuses for why we shouldn't meditate, why we shouldn't keep precepts. We always say it's too difficult. Even five precepts, just can't do it, too difficult. Or they bring up all these other ideas, oh, it's out of date. Ajahn, it's out of date. No one keeps 5 precepts anymore. They do actually. There's a lot of people who do. They just don't talk about it much. They're certainly not out of date because it's just basic wisdom. You keep 5 precepts, you're developing a lot of happiness for yourself and you're avoiding making a lot of bad karma. You practice mindfulness, you have a chance to see your mind even when there are more negative states of mind coming up. You can see them and know them. And that's the first step before you can abandon them. You've got to know what's coming up, that it's worth keeping or worth abandoning. We need to practice. So we need to overcome the excuses, get some commitment, like the Buddha, like Ajahn Chah, like any other good teacher, and then we follow. And sometimes we are more successful. Like when your practice is going well, you might say the way the Buddha used the description, he'd say the 5 indriya, you probably heard of, the 5 spiritual faculties kind of measure a person, your level of faith or confidence, your level of effort, how persistent and continuous it is, how much mindfulness you have, how much samadhi you've developed, and then panya, wisdom or insight into the 4 Noble Truths. That kind of determines where you're at in your practice. And as people with indriya well developed, they're ready to understand, this mind you don't have to attach to greed, anger, delusion, they can be abandoned. I need to put effort into that and it will happen. If your faculties are a little bit less developed, you may think, it probably is good, but I don't feel ready for it. We always say, I'm not the one, I don't have the barami, I don't have the merit, not for me. Maybe those other people can do it, but I can't. Sometimes we even feel that's a virtue. We're sort of, I'm no good at this. You hear that quite often. But if you're not good at something, it just means you've got to do it more, practice more. So it's not really an excuse, it's more like a kind of, you think it's a way out when you think like that, but it's not actually the right response, isn't it? If you feel you haven't done it enough, you don't have the merit, make more merit. Practice more, do it more. Anyway, we have to learn to develop some commitments so that we can train the mind, because all we're doing really is removing these layers of wrong thinking, defilement that causes suffering all the time, until we get back to the mind that doesn't do that, the mind that is just pure knowing, without creating a self, without creating suffering. What you might call the mind that sees things as they are, sees the impermanent nature of thoughts and feelings, the body, the material world around us. It just knows these things are impermanent. That sees that these things are dukkha, in the sense they're subject to change and decline. So, you build a beautiful hall here, but don't forget one day this hall will get old and fall apart and have to be rebuilt. Hopefully in many years from now. But whatever you build in this world, whatever you think of in this world, will be subject to decline. Nothing lasts. When you die, you don't take anything with you. And in that sense, you don't own any of it. If you can't take it with you, it's not yours. It's not self. So these three insights are what really help to purify your mind from attachment, wrong views, seeing that, this body ultimately has got to die. Please stand up, the person who's beaten death. Is anyone here not going to die? It's impossible, isn't it? You're born, you're going to have to die, but we never talk about it, never like to think about it, and so we get caught when it happens. We don't like it and we suffer. Somebody who has developed a lot of understanding of the impermanence of their body, they know they're going to die, they don't suffer with it, they accept it. It's not the biggest issue facing us, the fact that this body will get old, get sick and die. It's just natural. Bigger issue is this mind with all its wrong thinking, its attachments, its confusions. That's the real challenge facing us, not the body. So the Buddha said, bring your mind to the point where you can keep contemplating that everything is impermanent, suffering, not self. Then you start letting go, don't you? Why grab hold of something that is only suffering, that isn't really yours, that's temporary? You don't want to do that. Even pleasant feelings, the Buddha didn't say you can't have pleasant feelings. It happens. You eat something nice food, it will taste good. Or you sit down when you're tired and you feel comfortable, it feels good. But you have to know that feeling is impermanent and it's not self. It changes. So don't cling to it too much, too tightly. That's what you have to bring your mind to see. Don't cling to things as mine, myself, because that's a delusion. So all of the Buddhist teachings are helping you to see that on many levels, in many ways. Sometimes on the refined level, you're in a state of samadhi and you're reflecting, the happiness of samadhi is not self, and it doesn't last. It comes, it goes, it arises and ceases. Sometimes on much more ordinary sort of things, just the clothes you're wearing, one day they're going to wear out, aren't they? They don't last forever. So you still wear them and look after your clothes, wash them when you need to, but you also know one day, however good this clothing is, however useful, however beautiful it is, it will pass. One day I'll have to discard this clothing. So just as in the way that your clothing is impermanent, one day you will discard it because it will wear out. Same with this body. It will wear out, you have to discard it. Really, that's what death is, isn't it? You have to discard this body, and then the mind that knows that the body is impermanent can go on wherever and be peaceful. And the mind that doesn't know will cling. Say, I don't want to die, I don't want to die, and be very sad, very full of grief, full of attachment, and we suffer. So Ajahn Chah used to give a very simple teaching. He said, just contemplate the cup. Buddhist monks always have a cup. Today I have a cup, very good teaching utensil. The cup is already broken. It's not broken, of course, it's there holding water, but it's already broken, meaning one day it will break. one day your body will break apart and die. We don't want that. I wish you all could live for 1,000 years, if that's what's needed to get to enlightenment, but it's not going to happen, is it? You may live to 100 years if you're lucky, and even 100 years, you're not in a very good shape when you're 100 years old. We don't live forever. So your body is already broken, the cup is already broken. But when you understand that, it doesn't mean to say you have to be sad or depressed. You just know that's the way it is. Body is impermanent. Things that you know in your mind, knowledge, ideas, emotions, are impermanent. They don't last, do they? You feel pleasure, happy, then you feel sad, you feel bored, you feel excited. Your mental states are changing all day long. With mental states, the first thing to try and work out is, well, what is it conducive to my happiness, to the path of practice for my happiness and liberation? So those kind of mental states maybe you need to bring up and develop. Or is this mental state I'm experiencing just more suffering and leading to more suffering? Like greed, anger and delusion. Anything rooted in greed, anger and delusion is not for your happiness. So they're to be abandoned, let go. So you need to train your mind in that, to know the difference between wholesome and unwholesome, and then act accordingly. Cultivate the wholesome and develop them, abandon the unwholesome, which takes practice. That's another reason we listen to the Dhamma, so we get to know what the ideas about this, what is wholesome, what is unwholesome, and then start training ourselves. So maybe you go out of this talk and you're on your way home and you're getting irritated, you feel tired and it's late and there's too much traffic, and you start to get a little bit angry with yourself or somebody else, another driver or somebody. That's the time to bring up this reflection. Oh, what am I thinking now? Is this really wholesome? Or is this more unwholesome and leading to my feeling of stress? Maybe I should let this go. And because it's impermanent and not self, you can do that. Any state of suffering, you can let go, because it's not really you anyway. It's just a delusion. When you think it's you, oh, I'm stressed, I'm angry, I'm worried, I'm afraid. You trick yourself. So I knew one monk, he had a kind of a novel meditation just to help with this. He said, I'm always confronting my own mental states and state of mind, my mood. I always just say, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I'm happy, I don't believe it. I'm sad, I don't believe it. I'm angry, I don't believe it. I'm peaceful, I don't believe it. That for him, it worked. It helped him just to step back a little bit, have this separation or division between the mind that knows and the object, the mental state. And I don't believe it. I'll watch it, and I'm not going to attach too much to it because I don't believe it. They'd use it all the time. For him, it worked. Maybe someone else has a different one. Ajahn Chah used the one, it's not sure. You feel very peaceful for a while, but it's not sure, that might change. You think of something and you may think this thought is very true and correct and it helps you understand everything, but maybe later you realize you're still making a mistake. You believe something that wasn't true. It's not sure. Or with external things, you meet somebody one day and they're very friendly to you and happy. Oh, good, but it's not sure. Maybe tomorrow they come in and they insult you or they ignore you. Not sure. Life is full of it's not sure. Somebody just asked me, when am I going back to Melbourne? I said, well, if all goes well, on Monday we fly back very early. But it's not sure. Hopefully we will, but you never know. Everything in life really is not sure, and you can use that truth to your advantage to help you get back to the peaceful, pure mind. And all these things I'm attaching to, my beliefs, my feelings, the body is not sure. When you can see it's not sure, then maybe it helps just to loosen some of that attachment. That's another problem with attachment. People say, well, if you don't attach to anything, how do you function? What do you do in life? Well, you do attach. You attach to the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha. You attach to a meditation technique. You attach to your precepts. You're attached to doing good things and helping people. You're attached to, all kinds of things. The important thing is, though, don't attach so tightly that it becomes a cause for suffering. You can even attach to something very good and it can become a cause of suffering if you're over-attached, can't it? Say like you attach to your precepts, okay? You use precepts as a way of training yourself. Don't kill, don't steal, don't commit acts of sexual misconduct, don't tell lies, don't insult, don't drink. Okay, you use those precepts as guidelines in your daily life. You try not to attach to them too tightly though, because what happens when you attach too tightly is you start to become very judgmental. They don't keep the precepts, they're not like me, I'm good, they're not. You get a new kind of suffering based on an attachment, perhaps at first you don't see. Or you attach to your meditation object. I'm doing mindfulness of breathing every day. And then someone comes along and says, oh, I don't do that. I do my vipassana, or I contemplate the Buddha. Oh, okay. Maybe you're attached, well, but mine's better than yours. And you even get meditators arguing over a technique. Crazy. We can argue even over good things or attach too tightly even to something very good. So it's okay to attach, but don't attach so tightly that it hurts or leads you into an argument. Ajahn Chah used to give this really good little teaching. He'd say, well, how do you go through life without attachment? Well, you have to learn what is the right amount, so you're not creating suffering out of what you attach to. So he said it's like a torch. You hold a torch, meaning you have to attach to a torch when you're in the forest. Maybe this means nothing to you because you live in the city and you've always got electric lights, but I live in the forest. You use torches to get about at night. So you have a torch, you hold on to it, you attach to it to use it. You pick it up, you turn it on, you walk through the forest, and it's very helpful. But when you get to your destination, your hut in the forest, maybe you've got a candle or a light you can turn on. You turn the torch off and you put it down. It would be weird if you kept holding it all day, all night. My torch. That's what we mean by not attaching too much. It's like a car. You drive a car. You drove a car to come here. It's useful. So you need to attach to it on one level, but don't attach so tightly that, you won't leave your car. The talk is starting. Oh, I'm stuck here in my car. Oh, you can't put your car in the elevator. That would be really strange, wouldn't it? You're just stuck with the steering wheel and you're not going to get out of your car for anything. It would be strange, but that would be over-attachment or clinging too tightly, and it becomes a problem. A car is a vehicle and a very useful thing, but there comes a point where you do have to get out and leave it behind. You don't take your car to bed with you. You do when you're a kid. You go these little cars and you put them next to you if you really like them, or other things. You do attach to other things, but normally you don't take your car everywhere. You know how to let it go. It's the same with everything. You have to learn how to use things wisely and then let go. That's the kind of attachment the Buddha is talking about. He didn't say just blindly attach, blindly cling. He didn't say cling to the point where your hands hurt or you're causing yourself pain or someone else pain even. And you see that all the time, no? People cling to their views. I'm right, you're wrong. Could be a Buddhist again. The Buddhists are right. The Buddha was the best. The Buddha knows. And everyone else is wrong. You may end up with the first Buddhist war if you do that. Normally Buddhists don't start wars because they know how not to cling too tightly. Other people in the world, politics and everything, we do have wars and all kinds of fights, arguments. So you can attach or cling to things, but not so tightly that it leads on to suffering or making bad karma. And that's a subtle point you have to keep investigating as you go through your practice. Am I clinging too tightly? Maybe you cling too tightly to the teacher. Oh, I like Ajahn Kalyano. I like what he says. I think he's the best teacher for me. Yes, okay. And then someone comes along and says, oh, I never listened to Ajahn Kalyano. I have some other teacher. you don't cling that tightly. If you find a teacher helpful, good. If you don't, fine. But don't cling so tightly that you cause, the first Dhamma war. Or in a centre like this, maybe you're very smart. They built this Mahindarama meditation centre without a kitchen. Very smart. Because in most Buddhist centres or meditation centres or temples, monasteries, there's a kitchen. And where does the number one place of attachment come out? Is a kitchen. Everyone is the boss. Now you know why I never go into the kitchen at our monastery. I do actually, I go in there, but not very often. But that's often where you get a bit of friction in a monastery, say. It's because you start clinging to the kitchen, we do it my way, no, we do it the Buddha's way. That's the best way to clear things up. But not just the kitchen, anything, even another one on retreats I notice, people pick their spot, their mat, you've all got your mat, and then you go away for some other activity, you come back and someone else is on your mat. And I've seen this before, you're like, hold on, we're here to practice non-attachment, letting go, liberation, and people are fighting over the meditation cushion or the meditation mat. What went wrong? Attachment, clinging, that's what we do. Even Buddhists will do it. And of course everyone else does it as well. This is what we're investigating, where you attach, and you attach so tightly that you suffer and you cause others suffering as well. That's where we've got to start loosening a bit. So there's quite a lot to learn, isn't there? I've been talking for an hour now, maybe it's about time to stop. So there's quite a lot to learn from all this. You've got your 6 senses, and they're working all the time. And you've got attachments coming up. Am I attaching too much or too little? Quite a lot to learn. So I would encourage you all to keep listening to the Dhamma, keep practicing for your benefit, for your happiness. Don't give up, and just keep that attitude of learning. There's a monk I know once, he was living with Ajahn Chah, and Ajahn Chah sent him off to a very small little hermitage, a bit like Vihara Bun Raksa where I was this morning. Just a little hermitage on the hill, not much space, not many people went there, it was very quiet. And the monk who was sent there was living there, and after a while he was feeling restless. I'm not living with my teacher Ajahn Chah, no one's teaching me, what can I do? He went back to Ajahn Chah and said, I'm living in this hermitage. I'm not getting any teachings or meditation or practice. Can I come back to stay with you? And Ajahn Chah said, what do you mean you're not getting any teaching? You've got 6 teachers living with you. And the monk was confused because he was living on his own. 6 teachers? Ajahn Chah said, yeah, you've got your eyes, your ears, your nose, your tongue, and your mind. We've got 6 teachers going on at us all the time. I'm always surprised when they come and tell me, Ajahn, there was some committee and they had arguments or differences of opinion, problems. How do they have the time for that when they've got these 6 teachers already going at it? You've got your eyes giving you one lot of information, your ears another, and then you're thinking about stuff as well. I would forget all this other conflict in the world and competing with other people in life. Just work on yourself. That's already quite a lot, already 6 teachers to deal with. Ajahn Chah also said, if you want to deal with these 6 teachers who are always telling you this is good, that's bad, he said one way you do it is the way they catch lizards in Thailand, in the countryside. They have these termite mounds, probably have them here in Malaysia as well, and you have holes going into the termite mounds. It's just natural, the earth falls away, you have these holes. So lizards go in and they make a nest. Maybe they make a nest inside, it's all hollow and there's holes. So maybe you have a termite mound with 6 holes, and this lizard, you put your hand in to catch it, or it goes out another hole. So you block up 5 of the holes with earth, only 1 hole left. Then you can put your hand in, or you just keep your hand there. When the lizard comes out, you grab it. It's not a very good simile, this, because they take the lizard away and eat it. So it's not a very happy ending. I'm not encouraging you to eat lizards. But the idea is you block up 5 and you can catch the thing with one empty hole, you can get it. You have to do that with your senses. This is why you close your eyes when you meditate and you start ignoring sounds and you go right to the mind. You have to watch your mind if you want to deal with all this sense data. And that takes some time and effort. That's why you need to meditate, listen to the Dhamma and then do meditation regularly. It's the only way, as far as I can see. You're not going to do it any other way. I know it's hard, but it's worthwhile. So maybe I'll leave the talk there for now, and afterwards, if anyone has any questions, I'm available.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.